Hey guys, thank you so much for watching. Welcome to the Scholar Online YouTube channel. In this channel, we make videos on learning web development, learning web application development, e-commerce development, digital marketing. If you're new to this channel, please feel free to subscribe. You'll find the subscribe button at the bottom of the video that you're watching right now, that red button over there. Please subscribe so that you will always be informed and you'll get notifications every time we set up a new video in this channel. We have new videos on Wednesdays and on Saturdays. Also, like this video and leave me a comment below, and I will try to get to each and every single comment that is made on this video. Another useful feature that we have on our videos is at the bottom inside the description box. If you expand the description of the video, you will see we've got timestamps to interesting sections in the videos that we're making, because we make a lot of long videos, so you don't have to watch the entire video. You can just read through the timestamp and read about the section that you're interested in, and you can just click on that timestamp and it will take you exactly to that section, and you can just watch that section. And it's also useful in future. If you return, you can just go to the timestamp and click on the section that you want to watch again. And also in the description below, guys, we've got links to our social media channels: Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. Please follow us there as well. We sometimes output information in there, and let's start learning. Welcome back, guys. We are now on lecture 6 of this lecture series, where we are building a whole new web application from scratch using a Python and Django. And the web application that we're building is this one that I'm showing you right now. It is a job search career portal that would allow people to search for jobs, apply for jobs, log in, create a profile. Companies will be able to post jobs, so it's sort of like one of those, like Career 24 type of website that we're going to be building. So it's quite an involved process. And the approach that we're taking in this lecture series is, I'm not just teaching you Django, I'm not just teaching you a Python framework, another web application framework. I'm actually teaching you from a web development perspective. If you were faced with a client project of building a web application, how you'd go around it. As you'll see, the web application that we're building is a fully professional type of web application that you can actually, when we finish with this, we're going to actually load it up, we're going to deploy it, and it's going to go onto the market and it's going to be used by people. So it's a real life project. I'm taking you through the steps and stages that you would go through to build a real life project. So follow along with us, and if you like, code as we code, do as we do, and at the end of the day, you will have something like this. And you can use the principles that you learn in this web series to build any other type of web application that sort of requires data sets, data series, any sort of dynamic type a web application where you need user profiles, logins, data sets. You can use this to build even a Facebook type of application. If you learn the principles can be reapplied to any type of website. Okay, so what you're looking at right now is a website template that we downloaded from ThemeForest. So this is lecture 6 in the series. If you go through the previous lectures that we did, we went through the process of downloading this whole web template. So it's free. You can also go to the same link where we downloaded it from and download it and follow along and use it. And last week where we ended off is we were able to create a class, a model class of the job class, where we were able to sort of create data for a job, and a job class would be like the class that we're going to use to display a type of a job listing. So it will show the type of job, the company that is listing, where they are based, the salary that's being offered, the sort of typical, things that you would be required to list when you are listing a job. So we're able to go into our admin panel and actually enter 2 data sets that we would be able to view from the front end. And in the back end, we also were able to wire our home page to go into the database and read that data and obviously display it on the front end. And I think when we left off last week, we were not able to see the images, and I'm going to show you how to fix that quickly so that the images would be able to display on the front end. But where we are right now is we are now able to enter data into the database using the web admin backend, which automatically comes in with the Django. But in real life, that's not how you're going to do it. You're not going to every time you are listing a new job, to enter the data through the back end. Every time you have a new profile, you're not going to be entering the data through the back end. You're going to have a front end place. For example, somebody's going to register as a company, and that company is going to be able to go into their profile page, and they're going to be able to enter job applications and remove job applications as they wish. So we need to be able to code that into our web application. So the only reason why we entered it into the admin backend in the previous lectures was just to show you how the front end would look if it had real data in it. So we're going to delete this, and we're going to go through the process of actually building you a proper front end where you would have users logging in as a company, users logging in as an applicant, and the people that log in as a company are able to enter jobs that their companies are advertising, and the jobs that they enter will be shown on the front end. Now that we have the data set, we should be able to just create a page where they can do that. But before we can do that, before we can create a page for companies to log in, we need an entire profile, login, log out, a system. Okay, so that's what we're going to focus this lecture on, and it's going to be quite an involved process because there's a lot of steps to follow, and I've listed them down for you here so that we don't forget anything, and I don't forget anything as I go through this with you in this lecture. Okay. So this lecture is going to cover user registration. So we need the companies to register as a user, and we're going to have a special class for them to register as, and so that they can be able to log in the front end and enter their job specs or the jobs that they're advertising within their companies. All right. So this is what we're going to do. So first of all, we're going to create what we call an app for users. Okay, we're going to create an app for users that's going to cover the company as a user, that's going to cover the applicant as a user. All right, and the way we'll do this app will be very similar to how we created the app for jobs. Remember, when we created the job app, we're going to go ahead and create a user app in a similar manner. And once we've done that, we're going to create views and models for the user, and then we're going to register the app so that we can start working around the views and the models for the users, so we can create forms for them to create whatever their profiles is. Okay, so once we've done that, we're going to then have to create a registration form. So we're going to need a registration page, which is register.html. Okay, so lucky for us, within our templates, we have a template that is a user. This is a user login. Let's see, where's the user registration? That's not it. 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 Okay, so we need a page that is a user registration page. I think if I just open up over there, oh, there it is. Okay. There it is. Okay, so we need a page that is a user registration page where the user can log in and create the username, the password, and create a registration under their profile. But as you see right now, this is not linked. This is not in our web application. This is not wired yet. I've actually just physically opened the HTML file. So this is just the HTML file of my own personal computer. So the code for this HTML is this one over here. We're going to recode this HTML in Django format to create this page. But before we can do that, we also have to have the entire class for users. So there's a whole process we're going to follow, but we're going to have to create that register.html page. After we've done that, we're going to check that the registration process is working. Then after that, we're going to create the login and the logout page. Okay, so the login page is this one that you see over here. So once a person has registered, they will then be led to the login so they can create a login for their account. And this is what the login page would look like. It's just entering your email or your, whatever your username and your password, and then you can log in. And we're not going to be using this login by Facebook and Google+. So I'm going to remove that so that it looks like that, because we're just going to focus on the Django process and not any other one. Okay, maybe in future we'll do a lecture for, showing you how to actually create a Facebook and Google login, but we're not going to cover that in this lecture. Then we're going to go through something very, very important, which is the website terms and conditions. All right, and the website terms and conditions is what you see over here, and a lot of registration pages will have something like this where they have a link to the terms and conditions, and you have to accept the terms and conditions before you can actually sign up. And the terms and conditions are required when you're collecting users' profile information. If you're taking up anybody's personal email address, whatever the information your app is going to be collecting. So in our application, we're going to be collecting a lot of stuff. We're going to be collecting people's CVs. We're going to be collecting people's work records. We're going to be collecting a lot of personal data that's going to be associated with the clients that are using our web application. So by law in South Africa, at least, you're required to have terms and conditions and a privacy policy that covers all the rules and regulations around your website, so that you don't get sued for whatever reasons. If you don't have these terms and conditions, anybody can just come and say anything they want to say. So you need to be very clear about how you're going to use the data and what people are agreeing to when they provide their terms and when they provide their data to you. Okay, so this is why this is important. These are all the things and all the steps you're going to be going through if this was a real life project. So at this stage, perhaps you would go and sit with your client and have their legal team draft or agree to the terms and conditions. But I'm going to just take you through a lot of the basic one that I normally use, which has a lot of the points that you need to cover, around the act and the regulations and all the things that you must actually at least mention what you're going to be doing with the data that people are collecting, just to make sure that you are covered legally. And this is very, very important. Before you go live, you need to have this in place. And if you're going to use something like Google login and Facebook login, which we're not going to cover, maybe we'll do it at the end just as a bonus for this lecture, for this lecture series. The Google and the Facebook, applications require you to have a page for terms and conditions. So this is something you're going to have to do anyway. And the best place to do it is right now when you're doing the sign up, so that it's done and your terms of service pages is completed. So we're going to do that in this lecture, and then we're going to go through. Obviously, if you look at our current application now, where is it? There it is. You sort of, the way I did it last lecture, last week, you see the login, you see the register page, you see the profile, your profile button at the same time. In a real life application, the application would know whether you're logged in or not. And if you're logged in, for example, you only see the logout button. And if you're not logged in, then you see the login button. So we're going to go through how to do that in, sort of having conditionals in your HTML display, so that the HTML within Django knows that if the user is logged in, they must see the logout page. If the user is not logged in, they must see the login page, and how the user is able to see whether they're logged in or not. You need these visuals to sort of prompt the user to know what the status of the status of their profile in the application that you're building for them. So we're going to cover all of that. And then after that, we're going to do, if we have time, we'll do this in the lecture. Otherwise, maybe we'll break the lecture up in two. And then, but the second part of this whole user registration and sort of, the entire user, experience is you need a profile page, So it's not enough to just have a login and log out. Once you've logged in a person, you need to lead them to their profile page. This is a page where they're able to see all the information you have for them, so they can see the username that you have, their first name, their last name, whatever it is, the profile information that they're required. If you need a profile picture, whatever, they can see all of that, and they can choose to change that information if they want to change it. Like obviously something like an email address, perhaps we don't allow people to change that because that's going to be directly linked to their profile on this app. Maybe they want to create a new user if they want to use a new email address. But things like a profile picture, people like to have the ability to change that on a regular basis, and in our specific app, we're going to have two types of user profiles. We're going to have a user profile that's a company, and we're going to have a user profile that is a candidate. So we're going to have a place for candidates and a place for users. And the application is going to need to know whether you're a candidate or whether you're a company. Or perhaps we're going to allow everybody to create the same sort of user login credentials initially, and then it's up to them whether they want to create a company profile or whether they want to create a user sort of candidate profile. So we're going to have two types, and we'll show you how to do that, because for this type of application you need this. And a lot of web apps that I've built in my experience do have the different types of user profiles depending on who you are, and then the application shows you the things that you need to see based on your user profile, based on your role in this application. If your role is a company and that your role is for you to be able to post jobs, then that's what you want to see. You want to be able to see that you can post jobs. But if your role is a candidate and you're only interested in applying for jobs, then you only want to see jobs and how to update your CV and those kind of things. So we need to differentiate between those type of user profiles. So let's get straight to it. What I want to show you first is initially how to get the images to display. If you remember last week where we ended off, we couldn't see these images even though we had the URL set properly in the templates. Okay, so what you need to do is you need to set it up also in your URLs file. Okay, it is in the Django documentation and I just missed it last week. So what we're going to do is we're going to stop the application and we're going to make sure that we are in the root of our app, and that's where your manage.py file is. Okay, so I like to run all of my commands where your manage.py file, guys, is at the root of the directory. We need to go into the URLs files inside of the project directory. Okay, so we're going to use Nano to open the file, and then we need to go into Nano Scholar app, okay, to go into the project folder, and inside the project folder we are looking for urls.py. so this is the URLs file inside of the project directory, and Nano opens that file up. So let's click enter, and this is the file over here. I've added a couple of things over the week as I was fixing that problem of the images, but this is what you need to do yourself right now. You need to add this line at the bottom here that says, if you are in the debug state, if you're debugging, you need to direct the the location of the media URL and the media root in your URL patterns. Okay, so you need to add all of this. Okay, so this is the easiest way to do it right now. So you just add this line, if settings.debug URL patterns, you need to add static settings, media URL, and document root, media root. Okay, and this is already set up in the settings folder. If you recall, within the settings folder, we specified what the media root and the media URL is. We did that in the previous lecture when we were, setting up the upload folder and directing Django that is where the media root and the media URL is. So what you need to do right now is just to add that to your URL pattern so that your application knows where to go look for these for the media files, and you need to edit under your URL patterns. But before you can do that, you need to actually import your settings and import static. And the way you do it is from Django config, you import settings. From Django config URL static, you import static. So you need to import these two things, or you're going to have an import error. But once you've done, not an import, but you're going to have an error where it doesn't know what static, where it doesn't know what settings is. And then once you've imported that at the top, then you can add this line. And once you've done that, just save this file, and if you run it, then you'll be able to see the images will just appear like the way they're appearing now. Okay, I will make this code available, and I know I said that in the previous lectures, but I find it difficult to let code available when it's incomplete. So I think what I'd rather do is let's go through this entire lecture series. There's still a lot to cover. And when we reach the end, and I've tested the code at the end, because there's things that I figure out and I've made mistakes. I'm just a developer like everybody else. No one's perfect. And later on, like this, for example, I had overlooked, then I had to fix it. So instead of me giving you guys code that's incomplete, I think it's better for us to go through this whole project and build this whole application. And at the end, when we've run it, when we have deployed it and it's working, I will make the code available in our GitHub page. Okay, so eventually I will make the code available, but you can still go along and you follow with us. Everything that I do, I always show it on the screen, and if there's a mistake and I have to correct it, I also show you what I've corrected, and so forth and so forth. So if you actually follow the videos, you'll still be able to sort of catch what the code looks like, but I will make it available nonetheless at the end of the whole lecture series, and you can see what the final code looks like. I think it's better than to be displaying it, bits and pieces of coding, especially since I'm changing so much as I go along. Okay, so let's go through this whole list. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do is to create a new class. Okay, and like I said, always make sure that you are under the you are in the folder where the manage.py file is, and then we need to run the code to create a new application. Okay, so let's just type that for that. So to create a new application, you need to say Python, okay, manage.py, okay, so it calls that manage.py file, and then you need to say start app. All right, and then start app, we need to start an app called users. Okay, we're going to call this users, even though we do have a user class already. We're going to call this users. Okay, and click enter, and you won't see anything, but if you ls minus l again, you will see now, before you had jobs managed with py app static, now you have jobs managed static, and you have a new folder at the bottom here called users, and this was just created right now. Okay, so what we need to do, let's cd into users. All right, and let's see what's here. You have admin.py, apps.py, migrations, models, tests, views.py. So the first thing that you need to do is to register your app. All right, you need to register your app in your settings.py file. So let's go back into the root of our application, and then we need to just open the settings document. And to open that, you need to type in nano. It's inside the Scholar App directory, and it is called settings.py. All right, and then you need to just register your app in here. Okay, so previously we registered the jobs app. All right, so we need to also register the users app. Okay, users like that. Okay, and to make sure that you don't get the name wrong, to double check this, what you can do, let's just close this first. You can cd into users. All right, you can cd into users, you can list this, and you can open up the apps.py. All right, so this is where the app is defined. And if you have a look in here, you have to register this class. Okay, users config, but the name that is given is user. So you can also just use the name users and say that's the name of the app. So this is what you need to register inside your settings.py. So you need to make sure that you don't get that spelling right. But it usually is the same setting, it's the same spelling as your folder anyway. So I'm just going to close that. Okay, so let's go to our application itself. So we need to open up nano users. Nano's users and views.py. Okay, this is the views file inside of the users application, and currently there's nothing in here, and you're gonna need to create a function to display your page. All right, so if you recall how to do this, just go with me here. This is gonna be exactly the same way we've done all the other previous views. Okay, so we're gonna say the function is let's call this the register function. All right, and the register function takes in the request. All right, and then I'm gonna open that, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, and then for now let's just display the HTML file. All right, we will change and work on it later when we have the forms and everything in here. But let's just return. We start by returning the render. All right, open, close, and render takes in request as well. Okay, so that's the same request at the top, request object, same request object at the bottom here. And then it takes in the HTML file that you're going to be displaying that it needs to render. So the HTML file, we're going to call it register. We haven't created it yet, but we're going to create it and we'll call it register.html. And then after that, the last thing that it takes is obviously the context inside there. And currently it's empty, so we're going to just leave it like that. And this is basically your register function completed. Your register, view function completed. It takes in the request, it shows in that HTML, and currently there's nothing inside the context. So I just want to display a blank register form like you have here. Okay, so where is our register form? So this is a blank register form. It doesn't have, it's not wired to any form yet. It's not wired to any backend. It's just going to show the HTML as is, so that we can just make sure at least that our HTML is working fine, right? This is the HTML code for it. So I'm going to change a couple of things here. I'm going to remove that, and I'm going to say register. And if you recall how to do this, let's just go through that quickly. We're going to rearrange or recode all our hrefs so that it talks to the static folder. And if you recall how to do that, you remove that. And then we have the open and close curly braces. We have the percent signs in there, and we sort of refer to the static folder. And inside the static folder, we created another folder called app. And inside the app, you will have the breakdown of all different folders. So this is how we need to sort of recode or configure all the the static references in here. So let's just do this for everything. Right. So what we've done is that we've replaced the at the top here all your CSS. The way it was originally coded, we need to code it in Django format so that the Django will be able to find the CSS files where they are, and they are in the static folder, app images, whatever, app images, app CSS and so forth. And let me just show you how this works. Okay, so I'm going to close this, Control X, and save it. Yes. All right, and let's go into our static folder. All right, if you go into the static folder, so if you go cd static, and inside the static folder, if you ls, you will see in here we have a folder called app. All right, and then you go cd app. If you see the app, you will see CSS fonts, images, JS, and CSS. So all our JavaScript files are in here. All the CSS files are in here. We had to move them in here first initially. So the way you will create the URL path, you will create it based on which folder or which location, which URL path your CSS files are located inside of your static folder. And we did this, I think, lecture. I can't remember what lecture it was where we did this. And we moved all our files into the static folder inside a folder called app. So we could differentiate between the CSS for the app and the CSS for the admin. And if we have a new app that has new CSS, we'll, for example, create a new folder for it there. And that's why we are sort of routing it like this. Okay, so if you were doing your own app and your CSS file was sitting somewhere else inside the static folder, you just need to make sure that you route it accordingly to where your files are. And again, after you've done this, make sure that in your settings.py you define your static location, and at the top of your HTML file you need to always load static. All right, so you need to always make sure that at the top of your HTML you load static, or else you're going to get an error, so you mustn't forget this. So I think we are good. So let me just go through this again. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy this entire HTML as it is, and I'm going to load it into our VPS. All right, so let us go out of the static folder. All right, and then we need to go into our users file, and inside the users, you see we need to create a new folder called templates, because now these are the templates that are referred to by our users application. So to do that, you need to say mkdir is going to create a directory for you, and you're going to call it templates. Okay, you must always call this templates, or you can use the templates directory inside of the project directory if you want. Okay, but I like to keep my templates in the app directory of the specific template so that I can differentiate the templates. All right, so inside your users application, you can create a directory called templates, and then after you've done that, you're going to then cd to that directory called templates. Okay, templates, like that. And now I'm inside the templates directory, and then what are we going to call this? Let's just say nano. Currently there's nothing in here. If you say ls, you'll see there's nothing here. You just created this directory, it's empty. So if you use the nano command, remember, if the file doesn't exist, nano will create the file for you. So you're going to say nano register this. We want to call this register.html, because this is the same HTML file that we gave it inside of the views.py. If you recall, when we did the views.py, we called it register.html. So we need to call the HTML file the same. And I'm just going to paste in here everything that I've just copied up there. All right, and then I'm going to close this. I'm going to say yes, and then I'm going to go into the URL patterns and create the URL pattern for this register HTML that I just created. So I need to go cd out of there and cd out of there, and then I need to sort of open the URLs file by saying nano scroll app urls.py. If you call urls.py, is inside the app project directory, not app project directory, it's called app project directory, and that's that one there. And I'm just going to create a new path over here, and just copy that one. All right, and let's see. So the path is going to be, we're going to call this register. All right, which means if somebody goes to /register, they will find it. And then, okay, so we need to import the views at the top here. Okay, so from jobs, import views. So, so what I need to do here, first of all, is because we're going to be importing multiple views, we need to call them something else. Okay, so I'm going to call this job views, right? Jobs views. All right, and at the top here, I'm going to say from views, from jobs, import a views as, okay, jobs views. All right, so that I can import multiple views and that they're not all called the same, because the files are all called views.py files inside of the directory. Now, if I import views from the jobs application directory and the file is called views.py, and I also import views from the users application and the file is also called views.py, I'm going to have clashing views in here. So the best way to sort of remedy that is to say, to give it a different name. So import it as jobs view so that we can differentiate it in the code. And then we're going to do the same thing here for the users. I'm going to say from users. This is now from the users application. All right, we had jobs and now we have users. From the users application, import views, because it's also called views.py file, as users views. Okay, so now we have two types of views. We have users views and we have jobs views, and then we can refer to them inside of our URL patterns as such. Okay, so the first one is jobs views.home. All right, and then the second one that we need to load in here is not going to be jobs views, it's going to be users. Okay, users views dot is not dot home, because the application in here we didn't call it app. I mean the root or the function, we didn't call it home, we call it register. We called it register. So this is the name of the function inside of the views.py file. We called it register function. Remember we said def register. So that's what you need to put in here. And then the name of this page must be a different name. It can't be home page. In fact, I'm just going to call this register so that it's easy to remember. Okay, I'm just going to call it register. Okay, so what we've done here, let me just remove my cursor there. What we've done here is that we've said we now created a new path called register. So if you go to our domain./register, you're going to find these views. And then to display these views, Django is going to go into users views, and users views is from the users application. The views file inside there is a function called register function, and then that is a function that it needs to invoke, and the name of that view is going to be called register. And inside that function, remember we created this function and we're just displaying the register.html file, which currently is not wired to anything. We just want to see what it looks like. Okay, so we should be able to close this and say yes. All right, and let's just make sure that this is the right place. And then I'm just going to run our run server. Okay, Python run server, and just see what this looks like currently. If I don't have any errors, and let's go to our application. So we were running this directly out of our, where this file is actually physically saved on my computer. But now we're going to be running it off our VPS, application that is currently running. So we need to go slash register and see if we're gonna find our register page. There you go. Okay, so our register page is done, but currently it's not wired to anything. So what we're going to do next, obviously, is we need to then create the classes, the functions, whatever that's required that we need to do to be able to wire this register form, so that when somebody enters their information in here, they actually get registered in our application database. Okay, so the process we're going to follow is divided into three main steps. Okay, we are creating a new we're registering a new user into our database, and there's three main steps that we need to follow in order to complete that. The first one is that we need to create a form that will be used to register the new user. And that form is going to be created in a file that is called forms.py. That's the first step. The second one is that once we've created that form, we need to then import that form into our views. Currently, our views are just showing a plain HTML, which is not linked to any form. It's just the HTML that we copied from our template, and we displayed that just to make sure that the CSS and the JavaScript, a static coding, all that works well. But after we've done that, we need to then actually, inside our views, we need to talk to the form. all right, that we're going to create inside our forms, and then import that and use that form to populate our HTML page, and to create the variables that are going to be saved inside the form, so that we can enter those variables into our database to create our new user. All right, and once we've updated the views file, obviously we have to update the HTML file as well, because currently our HTML file is hard coded as it was from our template that it downloaded. We have to rewrite that HTML file in Django format with the form that we've created over here, so that it links each and every single variable to the form that we have, and that when we post that form into our view, the view will be able to get all those variables from the form and save them to our database. So all these steps are integrated and they're interlinked, but there are 3 distinct steps that you need to do properly in order to get a user registered into your database. Okay, so let's get started. What you'll notice is that a lot of Django, online tutorials, are very, very simplistic, and they sort of just show you how to print the form on the front end with one line that just says form. And that's a good way of printing a form. But if you have like custom HTML and custom CSS that you want to print into, and you want the fields to look the way you want them to look in your HTML, you sort of have to do a little bit of coding to display those fields manually, and that's what we're going to do. So what I'm going to show you here is a very complex way of displaying your form. It's the hardest way to do it, but it's necessary if you want to incorporate a lot of the CSS and the HTML that comes with your template that you've downloaded from wherever you've downloaded it. Okay, so when you create this is the code for creating the form. All right, when you create the form, you have to sort of specify each and every single field that goes into the form. Currently we're going to be using the user model. Okay, and the user model, if you didn't have a model, you would have to start by creating your own model and then import that model to use that model in your form. Okay, but we are going to be using the user model because the user model is already pre-created for us when the Django application gets formed the first time. If you recall, I was even able to create a super user from the back end. So there is already a user model in our Django application, and you can import it from Django contrib auth models user. Okay, and we're going to use that same model to create our registration, because we are registering users directly into that user class, and these users are going to be saved in the same place where we've created our super users. They're going to be saved in that exact same location using that user model. So we're going to be once you have the user model, then there's also a default form that comes with the user form, and a lot of the Django sort of tutorial you will see will just use this user creation form and create a blank, a very standardized registration form. But that doesn't help us if you have the template like we have. If you are creating a real client application in real life with custom fields, you sort of have to extend your user creation form with multiple fields that you need as you need them. And I'll give you an example. All right. In the standard user creation form itself that comes from Django contrib auth forms, it only really has the username and password. Okay, you are able to create a user just using the username and password. But we want to add email, we want to add a first name, we want to add a last name. We even want to add a check for accepting the terms and conditions. If you look at our form over here, I don't know if I can see it there. All right, you can't see it there. But if you can see it here. Okay, if you look at our form, we have first name, we have last name, we have email, we have password. We even have this sort of Boolean field of yes, no, accept terms and conditions. And we want to display this form like this. We want this field. We want the field for the name, for the last name. We want to build it exactly the way it is in the template. So the default user creation form doesn't have all these fields. So what we need to do is that we need to take that user creation form and sort of extend it to include all the other variables that we want to include in the form, as required, especially things like the checkbox and so forth and so forth. Okay, so the first one is the email. Okay, the email is something you would have to add yourself. All right, and the email is email field. All right, so this is standard. You would say forms.email field, and then these are all optional sort of variables that you can add in there to sort of help validate your form. Okay, first of all, we don't want people to just enter an email of whatever length they feel like, 1,000 characters or whatever. We want to limit an email address. I think a reasonable email address can be limited to only 100 characters. Okay, and we want to make sure that it is required. And what this required does, this is similar to if you had your not index, let me just go to this form. If you look at our original form, if you look at HTML coding, is that for every form input that is required, you would have that required at the end like that. You can just actually even just type it like that and say required. What this does is that when somebody is completing the form, the validation will kick in, and if they try to submit the form without entering that input, the form is going to kick them and say, actually, this is required, so you need to enter this, so that they don't submit the form with major fields that are required and they're not submitted in the form. The reason why we would want to do this is that we don't want somebody to submit a form and only enter their first name and not have a last name, or only enter their email address and not have a password. So we want to make sure that all the fields are entered, and one of the best ways to do it is obviously to have the asterisk that tells it with a red that shows them that actually you need to fill in this form. But you can do it programmatically in the backend with a typical HTML. You would have required like that, but how we cover it in our Python Django format is that we enter a new sort of like a field that says required is equals to true. Okay, so this will validate the form required. And another thing is that you can have help text, all right, and then you can include then like these are extra styling classes that you can add to that to that field. Okay, so for example, for the text input, I want it to be styled like form control, and I want it to have a placeholder that says email and whatever. Okay, so typically if you didn't do all of this, Django would style it whichever way it wants to style it, and there's many other ways of going around to do it. But if you're working with a template like we're working with, if you look at our template over here, sign up.html, it's very specific styling. Okay, and this styling comes in from our CSS at the top, and we want the form to look exactly the way we want it. So we want to pass in the styling ourselves the way we want to pass it into the variables, so that it doesn't style it anyhow it wants to style it. It styles it based on our CSS. And a lot of the Django tutorials you'll see online do not show you how to do this, okay? So this is the best way to do it, is to include an extra widget that you can find from forms or text input. Remember the form that you updated up there. So there is a class in there for text input, and inside that text input you can add attributes, okay? And those attributes that you're going to add is, for example, the form control, okay, class. And if you had any other class that you wanted to use, you could use that. So if you look at our sign up form, you'll see that our variables, our input, have that class of a form control, and then they also have the placeholder, all right, the last name, okay, and then the type is text. So that's covered. The type text is sort of covered under the text input, and then the class form control is covered there, and the placeholder is covered there. So this is really powerful way of displaying the forms, and I'm showing you how to enter those things manually. It takes a little bit of extra effort, but then your form is going to end up looking professional at the end of the day. And so we're going to do the exact same thing for all our other variables, and even variables that are already part of this user creation form. We are going to sort of introduce those variables so that we can enter our widgets and our length and our required and all those things. So all the variables that we want to input in our field, in our form, we're going to enter them manually, so that we can specify everything that we want to specify, including the class, including what must be in the placeholder, and including the fact that those variables are required. Okay, so for our form, we're going to enter email, we're going to enter first name, we're going to enter last name, username, password 1 and password 2. So these are all part of the user creation form. Okay, and the extra variable that we've added over here is what we call a check field. This check field is what you see at the bottom here, where users are going to be able to check whether or not they accept the terms and conditions that we give them. All right, and it's a Boolean field. All right, and the only thing we're going to put in there is required is equals to true. What this will do is that before anybody can submit this form, they would have to tick it. Okay, and if they don't tick it, they'll get an error that says you need to complete this section before you can continue. Then once you've done that, then you do the usual meta, class meta, and then the model is user. Obviously, this user model is the one that you've loaded up at the top there, and then the fields, you have to mention what the fields are. You have to input those fields in there, and it's a list. Username, email, first name, last name, password 1, password 2, check. They must match what you have in here. So you need to paste it inside the users app. All right, so let's cd into users. All right, and let's list what's in there. And what we're looking for is forms.py. I think forms.py doesn't come standard inside the app. It doesn't come installed. You have to create it, and the way to do it is just to say nano forums.py. Okay, forms like that.py. So I think I've already done this, so you'll see mine is already there. And then after you've done that, so let's go back to what we're trying to do here. Okay, let me put this closer to where everything is. Okay, so the first thing is to create the form itself. Okay, so we've gone through the process of creating the form and all the variables that go into the form, and I've showed you how that works. So the next thing after doing that is to go into the views.py file and update your views. Okay, currently the views are just showing a blank HTML a page which doesn't have any form in it. We need to change that to talk to our form and import our form from forms.py and display it. Okay. Similarly, I've already written the code because it's going to take me a long time to type this code in front of you. As you can see, this code is quite involved. So I'm just going to take you through the code that I've already typed. Okay. So in order to do that, I need to just let me list and see where that form is. I need to just open nano views.py. All right. Okay. It's not a long code. It's quite simple. If you recall, we just had def registered, request, and then you just had return all of that. So all of this, what's inside here, I've just re-entered it now. Okay. Now, what you need to do, the first thing is that there's two ways to access a root inside any application. You have a post, and a get. Okay, a post is when you submit a form. When you submit a form in a root, that form is actually sent as a post request in that same root. Okay, if you just request the page, that request comes through as a get request. Okay, so in this specific case, because we have a form, generally the default is always a get request on any HTML page. But if you have a form, then suddenly you have the option of not the option, but you have the alternative of a post request, and you need to handle this request differently. Okay, when you get a post request, you need to do certain things with that data that's going to come into the post request. So you're going to get data that comes with it, which is the information that's coming into the form. You have to deal with that information and process it. Whereas when you get a get request, you only have to display the page the way you want to display it. So previously we didn't have all of this. We just had def register and then return. So we just assumed we're just going to be getting whatever the request we get, whether it's post, whether it's get, we're just showing the HTML. Okay. We were not too concerned because we knew we didn't have forms. We didn't have any other thing that would give us a post request. But now that we have a form, there's a possibility that we might get a post request. In that case, you then have to specify two different alternatives of what must happen inside your views.py file for if you get a post request or if you get a get request. Okay, so the first one is is similar to what we had before. Okay, if request.method is get, if we get a get request, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're still going to have a form that is called the register form. If you recall, this is what we called our form. Okay, before we can use a form, we have to import it, and the way you import it is from .forms import register forms. .form is that forms.py file that we just worked on now, and the class of the form that we created was register form. Okay, if you're not sure, just go have a look again, and the class is register form. So this is what you want to import, and this whole file was saved as forms.py. So from forms.py, we want to import this register form. That's what we're saying at the top there. And then over here, we are saying the form is register form. Okay. Then we're going to create a variable called context. Okay, you can call this variable anything you like. I think generally in Django it's called context. Okay, because what this variable does is that it just creates a Python dict object with data that you want to send to the front end HTML form that will be processed by the HTML in the rendering process of that page. So in our HTML form, we need that in our HTML page, we need that form object because we need to talk to the variables inside the form, which are all the name, the username, the whatever. So we need to talk to those variables. We need to then send that form object to the front end. Okay, the way we're going to send it is that we introduce it, we declare it that this form is equals to register form, and then we put it inside the dict form is equals to form. This form is that form, and then when we return the render, when we render the page, we're rendering our HTML file, which is called register.html, and then we are pushing forward that data context, which is equals to form.form. Okay. Another way of writing this is removing context altogether and just copying that as an object and placing it in there, okay? The reason why I've done it like this is you might have multiple sort of variables that you want to introduce. So you might want to introduce form, you might want to introduce something else, So if you have more than one variable that you want to introduce, it's easier to type it off in this format and then just send that whole context object. So this is all we need to do if we are processing a GET request. If we are processing a POST request, also we create a form object, okay, which is the register form, but the difference now is that that register form takes in an argument, and that argument is request.post, okay? So the same argument request.method, you can also the same object request also has a post, request.post, which is the post that's being sent in there. This is going to be the data that comes from the form, okay? So the form is request.post, okay? And then we're going to check for if the form is valid, all right? If the form is valid, all right, this means that the form passes through the validation, and the validation can be a lot of things. It can be, is all the required fields filled in. We validate twice, okay? We validate via the HTML, but we also validate programmatically. Remember when we created the class and we made them to be required, if it passed the HTML validation or for some reason, and it will still get validated again in Python. And if, for example, a form was not filled, and a field was not filled in, you'll get an error, and the form is not going to pass the validation there, all right? And if it doesn't pass the validation there, then we're going to go through the second part, okay? But before we get that, let's just assume the form will be valid. And it's as simple as saying form.save. I think in other frameworks, if you worked with Python, with Flask, for example, you have to go through all, the fields and save them separately into the database. But with Django, it's so simple. You basically just say form.save. That's all you need to do, okay? And then the only thing you're doing at the bottom here is to just give feedback back to the user to say, okay, we've saved, with whatever, now you can now log in, okay? So we're going to get the user, which is the username, right? And to get data from the form, you just basically say form clean data get, whatever the field. So we want to get the field, the username field, which is in the form, all right? And we want to use this username field to just send a message to the client to say, the account was created, to just prompt them so that they know that the account was created. And in order to do that, before you can use these messages, variable, you need to sort of import it at the top there, so that's what you see from django.contrib import messages, okay? If you don't import these messages at the top there, you're going to get an error that messages is unknown, or whatever, Python doesn't recognize what is messages, it hasn't been defined. So you have to import it at the top there, and then you have messages access request wara. But there's also something else you need to do on the HTML, and we'll get to it when we're doing the HTML, to display the messages, okay? So currently we are just sort of forming the message and defining what the message will look like, but we also have to actually display it in the HTML so that the user can see it, okay? And then we redirect to a different page, okay? And the home page, if you recall, this is from the URLs, on the URLs file where we gave each and every single root a name, okay? So that name that you gave to a root, that is the same name that you would use here when you use redirect, okay? And redirect, before you can use redirect, you also have to import it, okay? So it's imported from the same place where render is imported. So at the top, where you shortcuts, Django shortcuts, where you import render, just add import redirect there as well, and then you'll be able to redirect. And what redirect does is that you always have to return something at the end of every request, because you need to tell Python what to do, or Django what to do after it finishes doing that. So once it's saved and it's shown the client whatever you want it to show, you need to tell it what it must do. You don't want somebody to register and then they still end up on the same page with the blank form and they don't know what has happened. So the first thing is that you inform the user that their registration was successful, and after you've informed them that their registration was successful, then you redirect them to the home page, okay? We are going to change this redirect later on to the login page, but because we haven't created that, we're just going to send to the home page just for us to check that everything works, okay? And then after that, else, this is now assuming that the form is not valid, okay? If the form is not valid, you then have to actually tell the user that the form is not valid. Actually, this print form is not valid is not necessary, because you're not going to tell the user. I put this on for my own troubleshooting, but in future, in reality, you wouldn't use this, because when you print in Python, it actually prints on the on the command line, and the user is not going to see that. So the only way to communicate this to the user is using the messages again. All right. And then you just sort of, return them to the same page and you use the messages. Okay. You need to specify what the form is, because you might want to display error messages. Okay. But you can't, there's nothing you're going to be able to do about error messages in the back end. Error messages are going to be from the form itself. So you need to send the form variable to the front end, and then from the form variable, you're going to be able to get the error messages out and be able to display them to the client. Okay, so that's quite a bit, okay, that I've explained in here. But the code is there. I mean, you can see what I've typed in here. You can copy and paste it, or you can just at the end of this whole lecture series, I'm going to make this code available for everybody. But once you've done this, I mean, let's have a look at our list. Okay, so the first thing is to create the forms.py, and then the next thing is to create the views.py. But all of this is not complete without the HTML file, okay? So if you recall, our HTML file is this one over here, is signup.html, okay? This is what it looks like. Here's we've changed the static variables, but our form still looks like, what it looks like over there, okay? So we need to actually rewrite this form in Django format, and using the form variable that we have, this form variable that we're sending over with the context, we need to start using that form variable here to to invoke the form or call the form, so that we can work with it to get what we want to get out of it. Okay, there's a couple of things, okay, and I'm going to go through them step by step, and if you miss something, just go through this video again step by step, because you have to get all of these things so that you don't have issues. Okay, the first thing is in the form itself. Okay, in the form itself, make sure that you have, if you were typing in a form, especially if you were doing this in Atom, you would do this, form, and then you would see there's an action, okay, and there's a method. Okay, the action is not so important, because we sort of know where it's going to go. You don't have to specify the action, but it's very, very important that you specify the method. Otherwise, it will assume the method is get. Okay, so this method is equals to post. You need to make sure that at the top of the form you have specified that. Okay, so form class is equals to login form, and then you need to specify the method is equals to post. And just to be safe, I like to sort of use post like that with uppercase letters. Okay, this is very, very important. If you don't do this, you're going to have a bit of an error. You're going to have the form being posted as a get, and you don't want that. Okay, so the second thing that is also very, very important, and if you miss this, your form is also not going to work very well. In Django, it's a requirement. You need to include the CSRF token. Okay, the CSRF token, it's a security measure that is built into Django. It's just to make sure that the form variables or the form data doesn't get sort of changed or interfered with from the time the client posted to the time to the time when the message is received in the back end. Okay, I just need to make sure that, is it written like that or is it written like this? Yeah, it's written like that. Okay, so I've already retyped this. Okay, it's written like CSRF token. Normally, all right, normally, and I'm going to just take all of this out, okay? And I'm going to copy all of this, because this is all the form fields. This is, you see at the top there, you've got a row, okay? Okay, let's see where this row ends. This row ends over there, okay? So you have a lot of columns in between there. So typically what normally happens, and you'll see this in a lot of Django tutorials, okay? You'll have all of this sort of like, removed, all right? And then you'll have something simple like this, like a form, right? Maybe it will be form.sp or whatever. I think SP or just form, depending on how, form as paragraph or form as table, whichever way they want to display the form. This will work. Okay, it will render your form and you will be able to submit it. Okay, the next thing you need to remember to do is, well, in the button here, you need to also say type is equals to submit. Okay, type is equal to submit, so that when this button gets clicked, it submits the form for you. But basically, in a lot of Django applications or Django tutorials, this is all you will see. But the problem with this system is that the form is not going to be rendered the way you want it to be rendered. Okay, it's not going to be rendered. Like, for example, what I want is to be able to have the first name and the second name like in one row, but two different columns, okay? And I want to organize it the way I want to organize it. So I actually want to write the fields separately, one by one. And I also want to use my own labeling for the field. I want to be able to use the red star and my own labeling for the field, okay? So I'm not going to do this form, okay? I'm going to just go back and undo, okay, and undo all of that and repaste what was here before, okay? And let me just go back and under the register there and just say type is equals to submit, okay, because that's important, okay? So I'm going to redo this whole form, okay? The label, I want to keep the label as is, all right? So the only thing I really need to change here is this, the input, okay? So I can just remove this, right? All right, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, what I'm going to do here, I'm going to say form dot, this is supposed to be the first name, okay, dot form dot the first name, and it's going to render the form, the first name field for me here, okay? And the problem is when you don't do it the way Django does it, you also have to find a way of showing the errors yourself. You have to type in, if there's errors, the errors must be displayed, because if you don't do it, the errors will not be displayed. So you actually have to manually do every single element of the form. Django simplifies it for you by you being able to just put in that form, that one form, variable. But the problem with that is that you don't have the customization of having your own labels and putting it the way that you want, putting it in. And you see there's a column, that's a column. You don't have that flexibility. Okay, so the price you pay, or the trade-off, is for you to have that flexibility. You sort of have to do everything manually yourself, okay? So on top of being able to render each and every single field separately, you also have to render the errors, okay? So that if there's an error in the form, the error must display, okay? So I'm not going to type all of this because I've already typed it and it's going to take a bit of time, okay? And I will make this code available at the end of the tutorial. But look at all of that, okay? You have to type all of this yourself, typically manually. And I'm going to go through just one field, okay? The first field is your, actually, let me go here. The first field is the first name, okay? So this is how the first name was, okay? We added that form.first name at the top there, and it's under a column MD6. So this is going to be like, it's going to look like this, where you have two columns, one for first name, one for last name. That's column MD6, column MD6. And here you have column MD12. This will fill the whole the whole column, okay? So this is MD12, this is MD12, this is MD6, MD6, so that you show the first name and the last name together, and then this one fills the whole form. You could even have password 1, password 2, and have MD6, MD6 if you wanted, but I'm going to leave it as it was in the original design. So that's basically what all of this does. And also, what I've done over here, so that's the form, the first name, all right? And then I've done, I've rewritten this. This is the errors. This shows you, the errors. So what this does is that it will say, if form first name dot errors, okay? So if this field has errors, okay? For error in this field, please display the error. This is all this does, okay? If the form has errors, you end if. For an error, so the errors will be a list, okay? If there's something in that list, yes, you can go in here, and then for every item in that list, all right, I want you using an alert danger to display the error. That's all this is doing. And what I like about this as well is that you also get to style your errors and have them look the way you want them to look. And I want to style my error with a proper alert danger, to make it look the way I want it to look. So we are really using our own CSS and HTML here, and not using the standard Django formats that make it very hard for you to style all of these things. If you just used form, you wouldn't be able to style your errors, you wouldn't be able to style how everything looks and put everything in columns in the way you want it to look, okay? Sometimes there's other frameworks you can use to get generic styling, but when you're doing a professional application like what we are showing you how to do in this tutorial, actually it's better if you go and dig into the details yourself and find a way to do this manually, and then you get to have the flexibility of styling. So that's the price that you have to pay, is for to get the flexibility of styling. There's a little bit more coding involved, which sort of, I don't know, you can decide whether or not you want to, which way you want to do it, okay? So this displays the errors, and then this displays the field, all right? And then you're going to do this for all the fields. And the nice thing about this as well is that you then get to introduce your check field, which wasn't originally in this the check field wasn't originally in your typical user create form. It's an extra field that we added. So because you added an extra field, you actually have to, to render the form manually so that you can put the field in manually the way you want it to look. So the way I want this check errors to look, I actually want the label to remain exactly the way it was, all right? And the only thing I'm going to change is just, the form.check over there, all right, the input, and then at the bottom of that, I'm going to show my errors, okay? So this gives you a little bit more flexibility, okay? And we've just done the same thing for all the fields, okay? So it's just, you can just go and replicate for all the fields, all right? And then once you've done that, you have your button submit, all right? And then, once you've done all of this, you just sort of copy all of that, and don't forget the load static at the top. You just copy all of this, all right? And then we're gonna close this first of all. Save modified buffer. I actually don't want to save anything here. All right. So under users, you need to go into your templates, okay? All right, and if you go into templates, you will see there is already the registered HTML, that is the hard-coded HTML file. So what you need to do is to say rm register.html, okay? Okay, what this does in Linux is that it will remove this file, okay? But I don't want to do this because I've already updated the form. So you will do this, you will rm, and after you've rm'd, you will then do nano, and then nano register.html, and when you do that, you'll have a blank form and you can just paste it. Instead of trying to delete everything and load everything, just delete the file using rm, and then nano, it will recreate the file, and then you can just paste everything in there, okay? So once you've done that, then you're gonna go back to the root of the app, all right? This is where the manage.py file is, okay? And then I just want to clear this, and then this is where you're going to run your run server, okay? So let's just paste that in there, Python run server, okay? And then once you've run, when you run server like that, so instead of going there, we're going to go into, this is our application, okay? And then we're gonna go into the register, all right? And then when you get there, you'll see now you have this form, okay? So there's an extra field that I've added called, username. This wasn't there before, okay? So you just need to add that field, okay? Okay, that's fine. Okay, so I think I like to do this all the time when I'm coding to see what the website would look like on a mobile. Okay, so just get used to doing this, and then you'll see that MD6 becomes SM12 or whatever. So everything just gets posted in one, and it scrolls nicely, so you'll be able to get to the bottom of the form. Okay, so that's fine. All right. So let's just put in a I've tested this already, but I'm gonna test it with you online. So let's say who's this? This is Scolo. Big S, Scolo online, all right, and my email is scolo@gmail.com. My username is Scolo, and my password is, this is very, very important. You've got to use a strong password. If you don't, for example, I'm going to try and use password, okay? Just use password, all right? If I try to register, you will see that I have to tick this box before I can continue because I've put it as a required field, okay? So I'm going to tick it, okay? And I'm going to go register. And you'll see now that I'm not allowed to register with a common password. It says to me, this password is too common because I used literally the word password for the password. So this is how the errors show, okay? If there's an error, it shows at the top, this password is too common, and it shows the field. So what I've done here is on my HTML file, at the top here, okay, I didn't show you that. At the top, under column MD12, I've added a whole new class, and then I've said so just above first name, okay. So just above first name over there. So this is first name. I've added a whole new column MD12, and then I've said if form.errors, okay. If there's errors in the form, if for example there was a problem with the form, I want you to for filled in forms, so for all the field forms, okay. If error in field.errors, this means that if that field has errors. Okay, so what this does is that if there's errors in the form, all right, it goes through all the fields in the form, and then if there's an error in any of the field in the form, okay, it's gonna print the error, and then it's gonna print the field. Sometimes you find people who just want to print the error and then they don't know which error that field was for. So I'm printing the error and the field, all right, so that I will know which field the error was for, because this is all shown at the top. This is over and above what I'm printing underneath each and every single. So I'm doing it twice so that I don't miss any error. You have to do this manually, okay? So here it will show this password is too common. A password again is where the error is, okay? This password is too common. It's showing it under the field, okay? So I'm doing it twice. I'm doing an error display at the bottom there, and I'm doing I'm looping through all the errors if they exist. This is not necessary. You can delete this. Actually, I didn't have this before. I only added it when I was having an error that I couldn't figure out which field that error was coming from. There was a field that was not registering, and because all my fields were required and that field was not coming through because I didn't have it properly configured, it was just showing me that there's an error, but I didn't know which field it was, okay? So this is very useful for troubleshooting, but I think if you've already done this and you've built this application properly and you're ready to deploy it, you can actually remove the top part for the client because you would have already fixed, the basics of your coding, and then you just want to display the errors at the bottom beneath the field itself, okay? So I'm going to just restart this this page, and I'm going to use a proper password this time, okay? I'm not going to use the password. And it's taking us back to the admin panel, to the front end, which means it's rerouting us like we asked it to reroute us. So we're gonna just quickly have a look at our admin panel. All right, so let me refresh this admin panel. All right, and I'm going to go to users. All right, and then just double check. This is the user that I just registered now. Okay, scholar@gmail.com, scholar online. Okay, this is a user that I registered earlier on and I was testing my coding before I went online. So basically the coding work, okay, like I said, I'll make it available at the end of this tutorial series. So we continue on with our Django user registration process. Okay, let us recap on what we've done so far. We've created a user app, okay, and we handled the classes and the views and the models for that and register the app. So we know the app is running. Okay, we worked on our user registration form. Okay, we created that forms.py file, and then we created the class for the form in there, and then we went on our views and linked it to the class, and then finally we completed our registered with HTML and our URL patterns to make sure that we can display our registration form. Okay, we've even tested the registration form in the last couple of minutes, and we have registered a new user, and we checked it on the admin panel, and that user is working. Okay, but before we can complete that entire process of the whole user registration, we're still missing the login and the logout. Okay, so it's not enough to create a user registration. The user won't always be able to go into the admin panel to check whether everything went well. You require a user to register, and provided the registration is successful, they should be actually led to the login page, and then they should log in into the application so that they can continue to do everything they need to do. So before we can finish this whole process, we need to create our login and our logout page. We're still going to get to the terms and conditions, but before we get there, I think let's do this first. Okay, so we're still on this part of our list. Okay. Now, Django is really amazing when it comes to the login and the logout page because it already has a lot of that, boilerplate coding written out for us. We don't have to work as hard as you would work if you're working with something like a Flask or any other web framework where you would have to write that whole function for the login page from scratch and create classes and everything. In this case, we can just import or use the specific class that's created for logging in and logging out, and and that's what we're going to do. Okay, so we should be able to register directly on our URL patterns and call that view from there. So let us go to our URL patterns. And our URL patterns, remember, they are inside our Scholar app application. So I'm going to actually, let me just open it from here. Okay, so I'm going to open our Scholar app, and then I'm going to open urls.py. All right, so this is where our URLs are. Okay, so Django already has the views built for us when it comes to logging in and logging out, because it's when someone logs in, you only need their username and their password. So that's pretty straightforward. We're not going to have to create that view from scratch. We can use that view that's already created for us by Django. Actually, it's what they call class-based views. Okay, so currently everything we've worked with so far is function-based views, and for the first time we're going to be seeing class-based views is now when we use the built-in class-based view for user login and user logout. Okay, so let's write that code. It's so simple, I won't even write it on a normal off camera. I'm going to write it right in front of you. Okay, so you need to start by importing it, and this is how you do it. Okay, from Django dot contrib. Just making sure I don't get the spelling wrong, okay? From Django.contrib.auth. All right, import views, okay? So these views exist in Django.contrib.auth, all right? Import views, and I'm gonna call this import views as, because you see there's a lot of view imports, okay? We import views there, we import views there. These views are imported from that app. These views are imported from that app, and these views are imported from that app. So you're importing views multiple times. So it's important that then you're gonna call it something different so that you don't conflict or you don't have your code contradicting itself with multiple variables named the same thing, okay? So you're gonna call this, you can call it anything you want, okay? So for consistency, I'm going to call this auth views, okay? So that I know that auth views talks to the, the built-in auth views, and users and job views are the ones that I just created now, in the users and the jobs app, okay? So then we can now talk to the auth views up here and create the, the URL pattern for the login and for the logout, okay? So let's just go to the bottom there, and okay, we're going to create some space there. All right, and then we're going to start typing path, okay? Path, and open close. Just remember to put in the comma at the end, because this is a list, or else that you don't forget to do it later on, okay? So the path that we're going to create, let's start with the login, okay? So the first argument that it takes in here is obviously the URL location on the application itself, where the login page is going to be. And obviously makes sense, you might want to call this the login, like a login sort of path. So if somebody went to our application or whatever, it's going to be called, /login, they would find this page. All right, and then after that, then you're gonna the second variable that it takes, or the second argument that it takes, is the actual view itself. All right, so the view in here is going to be auth views that we imported at the top there. All right, so we need to refer to the auth views. All right, and then the auth views dot login view. Okay, exactly the way that I've typed it. And you can have a look at the Django documentation to just make sure that you get this right, because everything that I'm showing you here is in the Django documentation. All right, so within the auth view, there is a class called login view, and you'll see that this view is different from this view here. All right, the views at the top here is what we call function-based views. We created a function inside that view file, and that function was like def, remember def, and then we had the name of the function, and then we wrote the function in there. That is what we call a function-based views. But this is a class-based view, and because it's a class-based view, you have to add at the end of that s view. All right, s_view, so that this class is going to be sort of rendered as a view. And then after that, the last thing that you need to put it in there is what we call the name of the view, whatever you're going to call it. Okay, so the name, I think, makes sense for us to call this login. All right. All right, and then the class-based view takes a it takes an argument, especially if you want to be able to decide where you want the template to be. If you do not put in the argument, then there's a sort of certain default location where you have to put in your template, and it's not always going to be where you think you need to put it in. So just to make your life easier for you and to simplify the whole process, we are going to specify exactly where the template is going to be. And I like to do this for a lot of my class-based views, so that I can choose where the templates are and I can create the templates the way that I like it. Okay, so inside the sview function, you can enter the argument of the template name. Okay, and just like this, template name, and then you're gonna give it the template. We're gonna decide what template we're gonna call it, and I think we'll just call this login.html. Okay, we have not created this template yet. We are going to create it now. Okay, so let's just go through what we've typed in here. All right, I'm going to go through this whole process all over again, just to clarify this for you, so that you understand exactly what we're doing here. This function is exactly the same as a function up here, except this is written as a function-based class as opposed as a class-based view, whereas this is a function-based view. Either way, it does the exact same thing, all right? At the top here, you have the actual URL where the view is going to be, and then you have to specify the function that calls that view, and the function that calls that HTML file or renders that HTML file is going to be the login view as a view, and the template that's going to be called in there is going to be the login.html template, and then the name of that root, this is the name of the root or the name of the URL location, is login, okay? So provided you have imported your auth views at the top there, and make sure that your spelling is right there, the spelling is right there, login view as view, and everything is correct, this should work without an issue. However, before you can complete this, there's 2 more steps you need to follow. You need to create the actual HTML file, all right? And then there's 1 more step that we'll do before the end. And actually, let's do that now so that we don't forget to do it. So I'm going to Control X and press yes over there. No. All right, we need to open our settings.py file and specify a couple of variables, the login redirect and the login URL, so that our class-based views are going to work without an issue. So to get out to our settings.py file, we can just open it from here. It's going to be nano Scholar app settings.py. All right, I think I spelled that wrong. Nano settings.py. Okay, there it is. And I'm going to do this right at the end of the file, okay? So right at the end, underneath where we specify the media URL, you need to specify 2 more variables, and the first one is login underscore redirect underscore URL, okay? And that's done. So the next important step is to work on our HTML page, all right? So for that, I'm going to take you to, I think I need to type the HTML page here, because it's going to take a little bit of effort and time to type this in, all right? So this is the login HTML that we're going to be working with, all right? It's very similar to the register HTML, okay? The register HTML is this one over here. This is the one that we've reworked, we've redone. That's the register at the top, and we've retyped a lot of these things. But if you look at the register HTML and the login HTML, it's very, very similar, okay? Even this is the login HTML opened up in Chrome, okay? You can see this is my actual file location where the login file is, and this is what it looks like, okay? The first thing I want to do is I want to remove this or login with, okay? So let me go to the bottom there, or login. Okay, I just want to remove this entire div over there, okay? I don't want to create the, you know, the whatever, okay? And then a sign up, okay? So sign up over here, and I just want to change this to, I want this to go to the href. I want this to go to URL for register. Okay, I want this to go to URL. That's how easy it is to put in, you know, to redefine, you know, a path using Django. You know, you specify the URL, and then this must be the name of the URL as you've named it inside your urls.py file. Okay, and then that's fine. Okay. So, but there's something else I want to do here. If you see this file, it's very similar to this file, okay? So we could do exactly what we did before and just basically copy this file and retype everything that's in this file, you know, the same way we did the register file. Or we could use another function that's in Django that helps us to sort of replicate HTMLs that are very, very similar. And you would have seen this before if you worked with Python, even if you worked with you know, Python Flask or other sort of Python you know, web application, you know, frameworks, is that within the, you know, the templating system, there's always a way to sort of you know, not have to redo all the HTML templates, especially if there's a lot of similarities between them. What do I mean by this? A lot of the CSS here is very similar to the CSS over there, okay? And a lot of the JavaScript there is also very similar to the JavaScript there. So there's a way that you can actually have like what we call a base template, or a layout template, okay, which will include a lot of the layout you know, variables in that one template. And then when it comes to the actual specific templates, you only then focus on the details of the template. For example, this whole section at the top here and at the bottom there, you could put it in what we call a layout template, all right? And then the details of the specific registration process, then you only have to type that in one template, okay? So let me show you, before I continue, how easy this is. I'm going to just copy the whole I'm going to copy the entire template over there, all right? I'm going to copy it and I'm going to create a new file. And I'm going to call this new file, I'm going to call it layout, okay? I'm going to call it layout 1 because in case we have multiple layout files, because I've already seen with this template, there's different layouts. So that's why I didn't use one layout for everything. In some cases, you might get away with being able to use one layout for all the pages. But in this specific template, I've seen the layouts are not the same, but the way they are similar, we're going to try and not replicate coding because the problem with replicating coding is every time you change something, you have to go change it on all the different templates. Whereas if you have similar coding and you have it in one place, if you want to change, for example, your routing, you only change it in one place and you don't change it everywhere, okay? So I'm going to call this layout1.html like that, okay? Then I'm going to paste everything in here, okay? Then inside this layout 1, I'm going to just pull out sections. So after I've put everything in there, I'm going to delete what's in here and leave only I'm going to delete everything that's in here and leave only the load static. And then I'm going to show you how to actually create a base template or a layout template. The way you do it is you go through your template and you find things that are specific only to the specific page, and that's what you want to include in the detail template, and everything else that is similar or that is the same throughout all the templates you want to leave in the layout template, okay? So I can see a lot of the CSS, the HTML is the same, except at the top here, you know, the meta section, you know, I would say actually from here to over there, this is probably unique, okay? So I'm going to cut this out. I'm going to cut it out, and then I'm going to leave like a sort of, you know, sort of a code that tells the assembler that something was cut out here and it needs to refer to the other template to find it, okay? And I'm going to call this a block meta. All right, so let's do this, block meta. And then at the end of block meta, we have end block. Okay, so what we've done here is that we've removed this section of code, all right, because it's very specific to the actual website itself, the title and everything, and I'm going to call it block meta. And later on when we're doing you know, our SEO and we have more variables to describe in the meta block of the page, we'll be able to do it there later. So for that specific one, I need to paste the exact same thing in here, block meta. Okay, and block. All right, and then I need to paste everything that's in here. So what this is going to do is that for the register page, because this is not going to replace our register page, all right, it's going to render all of this, and when it gets here, you know, it can't, it won't, okay, it's going to render everything in here, and then it will refer to block meta from the actual detail template itself and specifically render what's in here, okay? And the author in here, I'm going to put in my name, okay? Scholar Online. All right, so let's continue. Let's go. I want to leave all of that the same. And I think the hero, where the hero starts over there, the background image, I'm going to leave the same and assume that it's using the same background image on all the templates, unless if you want to include the background image and have different background images for your login and the register page. But for now, I'm going to actually leave the background image the same, and I'm going to start here. So from this div over here, this is where the form is, and the thing, this is where it ends, just before the section. I'm going to remove all of this, okay? I'm going to remove all of this over there up to there, okay? And then I'm going to call this block body. All right, and then I'm going to say end block. All right, end block. So this is block body and block, and back in here we're going to find a place where we're going to put block body again, block body, and we're going to have end block. All right, and then we're going to paste our block body in here. Let's just give it some space. And we're going to paste our block body in here. So this is specifically the register page. When it comes to block body, this is what it will render for the body. This is what it will render for the meta, and it will fit them in. It will sort of squeeze them in here. And then the rest of this template is exactly the same. Okay, so don't forget to load static in here as well. If you have any static, let me just try and see if there is any static in here. Let's find it. There's actually no static in here, so you don't have to load it in there. But I like to, yes, because when you load it, it's actually taking a lot of, so you don't have to load static in here at all because it's going to be loaded once off at the beginning there. So load static stays in that template, and there's static in there, but I see there's no static in there, so I'm going to remove load static and I'm going to leave it in here. So this is all you need for your layout template. Okay, so why am I doing it this way? Because when it comes to the login page, all of a sudden, all right, you can do the exact, you can, okay, so the next thing you need to do before you even do that, you need to then say extends. I need to get the all right. You need to say extends layout1.html. So what this does is that the coding node, Python knows that this this template is actually an extension. Not actually, don't put it in there. Sorry, this is layout one. You need to put it in here. Okay. You need to put it in there, sorry. So what this does is that it knows that this extends layout one. So before it even does anything, it will go and load layout one. Then as it loads layout one, it will find the blocks where it needs to actually input the template from this other side, and it will input the meta block in there, and it will input the body block over there. Why am I doing it this way? Because when it comes to the login page, you can exactly do the exact same thing. So you can go in there and get the extension of the layout one and put it at the top of your, all right, extend that over there, and then you can again remove only this section over there. So remove only that, all right, and have a block meta, all right, and block, and sort of paste it in there. All right, and then you don't have to retype all of this again. You only have to go into the body. Remember, I think we took it from the section, from the inside div inside of the section. So that's all you need. Okay, so I'm going to just like X this, you know, Control Command X. All right, and then I can delete everything. All right, I can delete everything. I don't have to retype all of that again. I can just do block body. Okay, I can just do block body like that, and block. All right, and then I can just paste that in there. All right, so what this does, it really reduces the amount of coding. Instead of replicating every time you have a template that is similar, instead of replicating all the typing, all the loading of the static and everything, let's just make sure there's no static in here. Okay, there wouldn't be because I actually haven't even configured this for you know, for Django, but nonetheless, you know, you get the point, right? So let me just extend layout, and does all of that, and that's pretty much it. Okay, so all the other templates that are going to look similar, we're just going to get off the layout template. Okay, so the only thing we need is to get this layout template inside our Django application, and then get the login template as well. But let's work on this login template before we do any of that. Now, inside of the, even though we have a class-based view, we still have a form. Okay, and the form is going to be the login form. It's going to be passed on to our login template. You know, so we need to then, you know, talk to it the same way we did our register template with the login, you know, but we only get the username and the password. So the exact same way we did that, we need to specify the username and the password. Okay, so over here, this your email is going to be username. All right, and password is going to remain as password. Okay, and over here we're going to just say form.username. All right, and then over here we're going to say form.password. Okay, all right, And I won't do the errors yet for now because I don't expect I'm going to be having a lot of errors here. But I think you get the point by now. You know how to go and include the errors and all of that. So you can do that as your little homework. I've shown you how to do it on the register template. Do it on the login template, especially when you're still in the development mode. It also helps a little bit with the troubleshooting and debugging when you have errors and all of that. But remember, again, in here you need to say let me just remind myself what it is you need to say. Sometimes I have to do this all the time. Okay, method post is what you need to say. Okay. Sometimes I have to remind myself all the time how the form must be done, so that you don't forget anything. Okay, so the method is equals to post, and this is the login form. That's the username. That's the password. All right, and then this is remember me. I'm gonna remove that remember me as well. I don't want that. Okay, we're not going to do that for now. We're going to pass that, and then again over here we need to say button is equals to type submit. All right, submit. I'm going to change that to say login. All right, and then don't have account register, and it's going to send us to the register. And then let's go into the login over here where already have an account login href. This must take us to login. Okay, so I'm going to press 2% signs, and this must be the URL for login. Right, so if you already have an account, just log in. If you don't have an account, just register. Okay, and then the other thing that I need to put in here on the form is the CSRF token. So let me just have a look at where the form starts. The form starts over there, and at the top of the form, if you recall, you need the CSRF token. Okay, CSRF token, like that, or else the form is not going to work properly. And let me just go through my coding, and I think that should be it. Okay, all right, I think that should be it. So I'm going to save all of this, save all, and hopefully if there's a problem, we're going to see it when we start running this application. Okay, so let's go back to our Scholar app. Okay, what I like to do is that all my layout templates, I like to keep them under the application folder, not the application, under the project folder. Okay, so if you go to Scholar cd Scholar app, like that. All right, there's currently no templates folder in here, but I like to keep all of my layout templates in here because this is a generic place that is not specifically in any one application. It's inside the project folder, so all my layout files are put in here because you might find more than one application sharing the same layout. And to be honest, in Django, it doesn't matter where you put the HTML file. As long as you put it inside of the templates folder, it doesn't really matter. I've tested this, whether it's inside one app's templates folder or a different app template folder, Django will always look for the templates inside of a folder called templates. Okay, so either way, it doesn't matter, but for my own organization, so that I know where everything is and so that I don't make a lot of mistakes, because Django can get a little bit messy, especially when the application gets a little bit more complex and you have multiple applications, multiple classes, data sets, you're going to get confused. So get used to structuring data very early on and get used to structuring your stuff early on so that when your app gets bigger and gets more complicated, you know your structure, you know how everything goes together. So this is the project folder. Inside of the project folder, I put everything that is standardized across the entire project, across multiple applications, like my URLs, okay, my URLs paths, like my like the settings.py, like for example, the layout templates will also go in here. All right, so for here I will then create mkdir because that directory doesn't exist. I'm going to create a directory called templates. All right, and we're going to cd in here. Okay, like that. And inside here, I'm going to create a file called layout1.html, like that. Okay, nano layout1.html. All right, and then I'm going to go and copy layout1. Okay, and let me just static. Okay, there's a lot of statics in here. There's no static in there, so I don't have to load it. And there's no static in there. Okay, good. So I'm going to copy this entire, this is just the layout folder. I'm going to copy it and I'm going to put it, the layout file, and I'm going to put it in here. Okay. Then I'm going to say, yes, save buffer. All right. And then I'm going to exit out of there. And I'm going to exit out of there. Okay. Okay, I've exited too much. Where am I? Okay, so we are back where we need to be. All right, so I need to then cd into the users. All right, if you cd into the users, ls, we need to go into the templates. Okay, so currently in here we have the register. All right, so I'm going to remove this register. Okay, so I'm going to say rm register.html. Okay, and if I ls again, there's nothing in there anymore. And then I'm gonna say nano register.html to recreate the file again, but it's going to be blank because now it's a new file, and I'm going to paste what's in here. Now it's just the the extension of the layout one and all the specific things that are specific to layout. Okay, so I'm going to copy these like that, and I'm going to paste it in there. I mean specific to registering. Okay, all right, and then I'm going to close that, and I'm going to save that, and then I can then create a new one called login.html. all right, and then that's also an empty file, and then I'm going to copy that. I think let's call this login and not have Jobia in there. All right, let's call this login. All right, and let's copy everything in there and paste it into the login. All right. All right. Save modified buffer, yes. All right. So what I want to do now is just to test that my actual registration page looks exactly the same as it was before. I've modified the code. I'm using the layout file. Before I even go into the login page, I just want to check that I haven't broken anything on the register page. Okay, so let's first of all have a look at the register page. If you ls, we are in the manage.py. Let's run our application over here, and let's hope we don't get any errors and that our register page looks like it should. Okay, first of all, there's no errors. Okay, and let's go to register. All right, and let's just check that it works. Okay, layout1.html template does not exist. Okay, it can't find the template layout1.html because we saved it under the templates folder inside of the project directory. Okay, I think I know what's wrong, and I think with Django, you will learn this, that some of the error messages, when they're sort of a bit cryptic, so you sort of have to make sure you don't forget everything. That's why it's very important. I like to write everything out that I'm doing. But how you fix this problem, okay? And I actually just figured it out now, is inside of the settings.py file, okay, you need to specify the location of your templates folder, right? So this is a Scholar app, all right? And a Scholar app is the name of the project. Okay, so I need to go in here under templates. All right, under template here under DIRs. Okay, I should have actually done this at the beginning. All right, you need to specify in here the the location. All right, so I'm gonna put that in in string format, and then the name of the application is or the project is called app. So you can just actually copy that, copy paste, and then backslash template. Okay, all right, and let's hope it will find it now. All right, okay, let's say yes. All right, and then once we've done that, let's run the application again. Let's test it. All right, it found it this time. Okay, so now our register template looks exactly like it look. It doesn't even look different from what we had before. So this is the beauty of what we call, templating, and being able to, work off one base template of one layout template to create multiple ones. So everything will remain the same. The background image, the HTML, the CSS, and the only thing you then have to focus on, sort of it, HTML page per HTML page, is just the content itself. All right. So then let's go to the login page and have a look over there. All right, the login page is also okay, but the HTML and the CSS is slightly off. I mean, let me open this in a different, on a different, page, so that you can see what I'm talking about. Okay. So this is the login page. All right, and this is the register page. All right. You can see the styling is slightly different. The styling is slightly different. And the reason this is that, we didn't really, I mean, we sort of, in this specific register template, we were able to call the different fields one by one and specify the actual styling of the input itself as form control when we were creating the form inside of our form class. Okay, and in this specific case, we didn't create the form class. We're just working off a class-based view, and it's using its own styling. Okay, so we'll try and fix this later on, but for now I think it's going to be sufficient to to be able to log in and to log out. Okay, so let me try and log in. All right, so but before I can log in, okay, I can't even log out yet, but I've created an account for, I think we created an account for Scolo. All right. And we've set the login URL. So if it logs in successfully, it should take us to the login URL that we've set. And I think let's try that. I think the username was Colo. All right. And let me see if I can remember my password. There you go. Okay. You can't really see it, but you are logged in. Okay. The reason why I know that I'm logged in is I didn't get any errors, and I wasn't, and I didn't, and I got directed to the direct URL that I put in my settings file. Okay, so the login works. Okay, but we need a visual, we need something to be able to tell us that the login works. The client needs to be able to know that now they've logged in. I mean, something nice would be to display their username at the top there, like here where it says my username. I'm going to replace this with the actual username of the person that's logged in. All right, and then I'm going to change this login and register to display that the person is logged in, and we can do that very, very quickly in our index.html file. Okay, so let's find our index.html file. It's that one over there. All right, and actually let's update it from in here. Okay, so let's find where it is. It's inside the jobs. Okay, and let's go into the template. All right, and let's open it. It's nano home.html. Okay. All right. And so what we need to do over here is we can have a conditional to display the username of the person if that person is logged in. All right. So over here where it says, I think over here, yes, over here where it says my username. Okay, I want to display the username of the person. Okay, and my username would be Django. When someone is logged in, it will have a variable called user. All right, and that user variable will be like available to be used on any template. Okay, and you don't have to send it from the front end, from the context. It is available on anywhere on the application. It's similar to in Flask where we have the variable session, which is it's a variable that's available on any template, and you don't have to send it from the back end to be able to use it. Okay, so the user template works similar to that. I mean, the user variable works similar to that. Okay, so you could just put in here user. Actually, let's say user.firstname. Okay, and leave some space, and user dot last name. okay? User dot first name dot user dot last name, okay? But we only want to display this if the user is logged in, okay? So we don't want to display this if the user is not logged in, okay? So let's start using that conditional that is able to show whether somebody is logged in or not, okay? So we need to have the percentage sign, open, close, and then we can say if user dot is authenticated, okay? And I must get the spelling right. Authenticated. If user is authenticated, all right? And if the user is not authenticated, I'm going to display something else, okay? If the user is not authenticated, what am I trying to do, okay? Okay, always remember your end if, okay? So if the user is not authenticated, you just display you display nothing, okay? So I'm going to just replace that, paste that in there. And instead of displaying that, I'm just going to say, you know, careers portal. Okay, so what does this do? If user is authenticated, it will show your username, all right, because you are logged in, you have those variables. If user is, if else, which means the user is not authenticated, it will just show blank careers portal, and the user won't know that the username was supposed to display there, okay? And I'm going to utilize this to also work around my login and my register buttons over here, okay? So I want to remove the register and just have Okay, so let me just take you through what I've just typed in here. So the buttons, we will be able to, if the user is authenticated, we want to show them the profile button, which should take them to the profile page, which we haven't created yet, okay? So for now, it's just leading nowhere. But if the user is not authenticated, so if this is false, it will show them instead the register button, which will take them to the register page. And on the register page, there is the option to log in as well, okay? So let us save this and let us just rerun this, and provided everything works, because currently we've logged in, even though you can't see it, Python knows that we've logged in, Django knows that we've logged in. We should actually see that register button disappear, and we should see a button that says profile that shows us that we are logged in, okay? And then after that, we can be able to create our logout function, okay? So let's run our application. Just going to copy that, and I'm going to paste it in there. All right, and we're running our application, and I'm just going to restart this page. If everything goes well, I should see my username there, and I shouldn't see these buttons anymore. I should actually see a button that says profile, okay? If there's no errors on this HTML page, okay? There is errors. Could not pass the remainder of user.first name, user.last name. Okay, so let me just actually get back here, and let me stop this. All right, let me just open this file. Nano jobs template. All right, because actually what needs to happen here, actually I know what the problem is here. What we need to have here is we need to close that and leave space and reopen it again, okay? Because you can't write them all in one, you know, so this represents one variable, represents another variable, okay? So let's test that first, and let's just run this. right, and run it over there. Okay, there you go. All right, so it's showing the first name and the last name, and then it's showing the profile page because we actually logged in. All right, so Django knows that we logged in. Okay, so now let us go and create the path for the logout page. All right, so for the logout page, what we're going to do is that we're going to make it similar to the login page. All right, so I'm going to just create a new HTML file. All right, a new HTML file. New file, and I'm going to call it logout.html, like that. All right, and then I'm going to copy everything that's inside the login. Okay, extend layout 1, everything like that. Copy it and put it inside the logout. So by the time you reach the logout route, you are basically already logged out. So the moment you go /logout, it actually clears the cookies, it logs you out. So the only thing you need to do with the logout HTML is to redirect the user some way, either redirect them to logging in again or redirect them back to the home page, which is what I've done. So you need to remove the form from the logout HTML. You don't need a form. By the time you reach that logout HTML, you are already logged out. Okay, so what you do there is that what I did is that I removed the form. Okay, and I just had I added that H4 at the top. So this is the place where you had that login, like the sort of the heading of the form, and I just replaced that with "you have been logged out." Okay, maybe you can add "successfully" or whatever. It's up to you what you want to put in there. Okay, but "you have been logged out" is sufficient. And then after that, I've just added a row. Okay, so I added a break so that there's a bit of space, and I've added a row in there, and inside that row I've added 2 columns MD6, which means it's going to split that row into 2 equal sections. Okay, so that I can have one button that says login that will take the user back to the login page, and another button that says home, and it will take the user to the home page. So the user has an option. Once they've logged out, they can decide, do they want to go back just to the home and start browsing from there logged out, or do they want to go to the login page and log in again. Okay, so let's test if this is working. And we go in there and we clear this, and we need to create it inside of let me see, inside of the users. Okay, cd template. Okay, so we need to say nano logout.html like that, and then we paste and we save it as that. Okay, and let's cd again out of there. And then what we need to do now is to get the URL pattern for logging out, okay, because we haven't done that yet. If we try to go to the logout route right now, it's going to tell us that it's going to give us the 404 page because we haven't done the URL for that. Okay, so we need to open our URL file, which is inside of Scholar app, urls.py. Okay, so this file over here, we're just going to copy that as it is. All right, and we're going to paste the logout path in there. Okay, 1 2 3 4, paste that with a comma at the end, and we're going to call this logout. All right, we're going to call this logout, and it's going to be logout.html. That's the template it must show. Okay, and it is logout view. All right, so it's not login view. Instead of login view, it is logout view. All right, and then the path itself is logout. All right, so let me go down here and just double check what I'm saying. So this is the logout, not the login. It's auth views, the same auth views as you have in there, but instead of auth views.login view, it's auth views.logout view as view, and the template that you need to display here is the logout.html, and the name is going to be logout. Okay, so let us save that. All right, and then let us run our application. Okay, so I'm just going to copy that and put that in there. Okay, to run our application. All right, this is the home page. Let's just refresh that so that it picks up everything. And then currently I'm logged out. Okay, you can see careers portal there. Once you logged out, you see careers portal in there. Okay, so there's no login page, there's only a register page here, because let's assume that the majority of people that come to your website would want to just see the register button, there would be new people. Okay, so they would click the register button, and then when they get here, it will show them their username, everything. And imagine the user is already registered, so they have an option at the bottom there, already have an account, sign in. So this is how they'll navigate to the login page. Okay, and then from the login page, I'm just going to log in as the Scholar user and put in my password. All right, and then I'm gonna click on the login button. Okay, all right, and then what does it do? It takes me to the home page. Remember, it should technically take us to the profile page, but we haven't built that yet. So currently we are redirecting people back to the login page. I mean to the home page. And but there's a difference now. When you're in the home page, you can see now your username at the top, because the username is displayed if you're logged in, and you can see the profile button which is displayed when you're logged in. You don't see the register button anymore because you are now logged in. You see the profile button. So you want people to be able to see their profile button here. And I think if you had a profile picture, perhaps you would even replace that with their profile picture and show that instead. Okay, so now we want to log out. So there's no route that says log out. Maybe under the profile you would have a drop down that allows people to log out, but in this specific case we can just enter it manually. Okay, you can enter manually and say log out like that. Okay, so if you say logout, it's going to take us to the logout page. But remember what I said to you, when you get here, you are basically already logged out. Okay, you have been logged out, and then you can see the two options. These are the two buttons I created. The user can either go back to login, or they can go to the home page. Okay, if they go back to login, it will take them to the login page and they can log in. And if they click the other one, it would have taken them back to the home page. Okay, and this is the register button. Okay, so I'm going to just remove that and find myself in the home page. Okay, so what I want to do now before we continue any further is to create our our terms and conditions page, and our I think that's important, and you must just get into the habit, especially when you're creating professional applications for clients, even for yourself. The moment you start taking in user data, user information, you have to have a privacy and a terms and condition page that describes how everything works. Okay, so lucky for me, I've got a page over here with I've got a template that I use for, creating this page, and I'm just going to actually basically copy this. It's got sections, overview, section 1, section 2, section 2, section 3, and I'm just going to put this in an HTML file, okay, very, very quickly. All right, so let's just put this close to where we are, and then let's find an HTML file. I think I've got an HTML file here that says terms and conditions. All right. All right, okay, so we've done all of that. Let's fix a little bit at the top here as well. And then this post a job button, this is that button that's supposed to take you to so this is that button that's similar to that button over there that's supposed to take you to, I think this is the register. So actually I'm just going to leave it blank, and I'm going to copy from the index register. Okay, and that remains the same. So we're going to copy just as it is there, and we're going to put it in here, and you'll see why we need to create okay, you're gonna see why we need to create again the layout, and we're gonna do the layout for these templates because you can see they're very similar. Okay. All right, and go into our VPS machine. Okay, let's stop this server from running. Let's clear. Okay, so terms and conditions, we can put this directly in our HTML. I mean, you can put this directly in our, let's have a look here, CD. Actually, let's put it inside the jobs, okay? Okay, CD jobs, all right? CD template, all right? And let's put it in here, all right? So nano, let's call this terms and conditions .html. Terms and conditions .html. Okay, let's paste this in here. All right, save this, yes. All right, terms and conditions. All right, so let's cd out of here. Cd out of here. No, actually, let's cd back into jobs and create a view for this. Let's nano views.py. All right, so it's going to be very, very simple to create a view for this. Okay, we don't need any, we're not passing any variables to the front end. So we can basically just say views terms. I'm just going to call it terms for ease of, to remember how this works. And it needs to take in the request object like that. And then 4 spaces, 1, 2, 3, 4, return. Okay, render, open, close. And then the first variable it takes is your request object. All right, and then it takes the name of the template. If you recall what we called it, terms and conditions. Terms and conditions .html. And then the last variable that it takes is the context, okay, and that's just going to be an empty dict object. So that should be sufficient to render a view which doesn't take in any data, any data from the function itself. So I'm going to just close this, Command X, and save that, and then we can then cd out of here and see and open our URLs to create the URL pattern for this. So there we need to open a Scholar app. Okay, Scholar app urls.py. All right, and then we're just going to go to the bottom here and create a URL pattern for this. Okay, so we need to save this 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so we need to create a path, open, close, comma at the end, and then this is going to be terms and conditions. So we're going to call it exactly that, terms and like that, terms and conditions. Okay, and then it's going to take in, remember we created this inside the jobs view, so we need to go into the jobs views. All right, so we need to say jobs views dot terms, because that's what we call the function in there, we call it terms. And then we're going to just call this, we're going to give it a name inside a string, and we're just going to call it terms and conditions. Yeah, let's just call it terms. Terms. Simplify it, okay? Terms and conditions, that's the URL pattern. I mean, that's we need to have an ending slash in here. All right, like that. All right, so this is terms and conditions, jobs views dot terms. Okay, jobs views dot terms. And then we're going to call that URL path terms. Okay, so let us save this. All right, and then let's go into our remember our login and our register. It's our register template where you need to be able to see the terms and conditions. Okay, so let's go into that. Okay, so we need to open up nano users. That's the name of the app, and inside the users we have templates. Okay, and inside templates we have register. Okay, .html. Okay, like that. So inside here at the bottom, I think it's the end of the form, where we have to say, you accept the terms and conditions over there. All right, over there, yes, somewhere there. Okay, so that URL, we now have the URL for this. We can simply build it. It's open close brackets and 2% signs. Okay, and it's a URL, and it's a URL for terms. All right, that's all you need to write, URL for terms. Okay, so let's save that. And then let's run our app again. We're going to copy our run server function, our run server in there and paste it over there. Run this server, no issues, no errors. So let's go to the function itself. I mean, this is where we are. Okay, so let's go to the register page. Oops. Reverse for terms not found. Terms is not a valid view function or pattern name. Just go through our URLs file and try and figure out what the problem is. Okay, so I'm going to open let's go to app urls.py. Okay, let's have a look there. All right, So this is the pattern that it doesn't find. This is very useful also. I mean, this will help you in future as well if you have to troubleshoot this type of errors, okay? So when you get an error that says reverse for terms not found, you are trying to, get the name of the URL that's called terms. It means there's a problem with your URL. Either the function is not there or is not valid, or the name is invalid, okay? So one of those two is the problem. So if we look at our function over here, okay, I actually had a look at it off camera, and I immediately saw what the error is. You can see there that we forgot to say name is equals to terms, okay? So we need to say name is equals to terms over there, the same way we've done it for the other ones. And probably one of the best ways to redo a URL is to copy and paste, which is what I always do, okay? And this time I decided to type it out, and I'm a little bit tired, so you can forget some things when you do that, okay? Okay, and let's test it out now and see if that's going to work, okay? So we're going to just run, let's copy our run function over there, all right, and run this app again and see if we're gonna get it right this time. All right, so it's running, and then let's just restart the register page again. Okay, so from the register page we want to go into the terms and conditions, okay? And you can see over there, if you hover over the terms and conditions at the bottom of the page, the bottom, I don't know, bottom left of the page, you'll see over there where the error is, you will see the URL that is going to go to. It's going to go to terms and conditions. So let's click it and see. Okay, so it's working now. Okay, so I've only put in that first section, okay, the first section where you're only seeing the first paragraph. So if you look at our document, so what I'm going to do off camera, because I don't want to waste all your time, is do the rest of the terms and conditions, but at least you can see how to do that, okay? So that's basically in real life, it was a real application, how you'd go about doing your terms and conditions. So on the register page, you always have to have a link to it, and you have to think about it at this point. Okay, terms and conditions, if you click it, it takes you over there, and then users can read the terms and they can agree to the terms and conditions before they do the user registration. And obviously later off camera, you can complete the rest of the terms and conditions on this HTML page. And I think I'm going to stop this video here because it's getting a little bit too long. Okay, we still have a lot to do. So let's say this will be part one of completing the user registration, because the second part of completing the user registration is doing the user profile, okay? So in this specific application, we are going to have two profiles for users. We're going to have two types of users. We're going to have a user that's a company, and we're going to have a user that's a candidate, and they're going to have different functionalities, and they need to see different things on their profile pages. And we're going to do all of that later on. We can't do it now. I think the video is a little bit too long, so I'm going to stop it here, but let's just recap on what we've done so far in this video or this lecture. We started by creating a whole new app, and we call that app users, okay? We then created a new form for that users. Instead of using the standard form that comes with Django, which is the user create form, we were able to extend the user create form to add extra variables like your checkbox to accept the terms and conditions, and the first name, the last name, which is generally not in the user registration form, okay? So we created all of that, and we had to also create our form manually because we wanted to have our own special CSS and HTML and sort of form control CSS in the form. So we had to do that, especially it took a little bit of coding. I think that's what took us a long time to finish this lecture, but that was necessary because we wanted a little bit more control and the ability to sort of design the form the way we want to design it, as opposed to the standard sort of default form that comes with a with a Django out of the box. Okay, so that's why we did that. Okay, so after that, we then created our HTML page, registered HTML page. We got the URL pattern for that. We tested that it's working and everything is fine. We're able to see the new user that we created in the back end. Okay, so once we created a new user, then we're able to come back and use now the standard, what we call class-based functions that come with Django to create our login and logout page. Okay, and the nice thing about using the class-based functions is that we didn't have to build the functions ourselves. We didn't have to create the views ourselves. We just downloaded the views directly from Django auth. Okay, and then once we downloaded the views, the only thing we had to do was to build the HTML that goes with that view. Okay, so you saw us building the login HTML and the logout HTML, and then for the first time, we also in this lecture showed you how to do a layout template. okay, where you have multiple HTML templates that look similar. We had the register, the login, and the logout templates that look very, very similar. They have the same CSS, the same JavaScript. So we worked on creating a base template and we called it layout 1. So that layout 1 is applicable to all the templates, and then we just focused on creating the actual specific content that is specific to the page separately, and then we created our layout inside of our project folder, and then we went back to the settings.html and made sure that we registered the templates folder inside the settings.html, because we couldn't find our template until we did that. Okay, so that was very interesting. We did that. So once we did that, currently we just finished off with creating the terms and conditions page, and we had some issues getting that page to work, guys. You saw us, we went through it. I went through it on camera as I was fixing and troubleshooting that, and this will happen a lot. That's why I did it on camera. Sometimes I cut these sections where I'm experiencing errors and I don't show it, but sometimes it's important to show it, because especially if you're a new Django developer, you have to learn how to sort of troubleshoot, being able to read the errors and seeing where that error is taking you, so that you can go back to your code and fix it. Okay, this is going to be your daily life as a programmer. You are always going to be coming across errors, and I think as people that teach development, it's important that we also show you that we also experience errors. It doesn't matter how long you have been developing for. Debugging and troubleshooting is one of the most common things that developers do, and they do that for years and years. You never ever get over that. The key is to be able to read the error and have the error directly to where the problem could be, so that you can fix it. Okay, so we were able to fix our terms and conditions and finally got it displayed. Okay, and we also fixed the navigation bar as well, to be able to show us sort of the current login or log out status of the user. Okay, so when the user is logged in, they can see their profile page, but when they are logged out, they can see the register page. Okay, so we've already done that, and when they're logged in, they can also see their username. So that's very important. It gives a visual to the user that now I'm logged in or now I'm logged out. Okay, so we've done a lot, but we wanted to do all of this, but we're running out of time, and I think we're going to leave this for the next lecture. What we're going to do in the next lecture, we're going to create the actual profile pages. We will create the profile class, and once we create the profile class, we will then go and create the pages and continue with that. Thank you guys for watching, and I think we will see you next week. That's for sure. We'll give you a whole week to go through what we've done in this video and get ready for the next lecture.